Wassah Dudes, welcome back to our retrolection. This is episode 2.
Hello, everybody. My name's Jeffrey Arnold.
And my name's Mike Casey. Welcome back to the show. If you joined us for our first episode, thanks. If not, what are you doing? Go back and listen to that. It's not episodic. You can listen to any episode you want, but we'd appreciate it if you listened to the first one. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about this week's topic, which is, I believe, like gaming, move into
movies.
film.
Yeah, we're kind of a throwback here with games that are like across the movie realm and vice versa. So one of my very first movie games I ever played was Friday the 13th on the Nintendo.
Oh.
Do you remember that one?
You know what's funny is when you were talking about this episode, I do remember that, but when you were talking about this episode, I was just thinking about games that became movies, but I like that of movies that became games because there's a ton to pulverize.
There is enough to pulverize.
Anyway, so Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Now that, if I remember correctly, I feel like, was that the one that released with like they just had like a sticker on it and the name was written down on it?
I think it was done by LJN, if I'm not mistaken. And they did they did the Back to Future games too from Nintendo.
I do remember.
So
those
it was
too,
it had a picture of Jason on there with the hockey mask.
Okay.
So
I'm thinking of Halloween. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, but
so basically, was this a game that you actually go through the little camping area, and you actually had to fight Jason through multiple times before you actually killed him.
Okay.
So it was kind of repetitive,
that.
but it was hard. A lot of the game was hard.
I mean, I guess technically you have to fight him in the movies a few times.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But did it translate well on the NES? Do you remember?
I didn't own it. I had a friend of mine that let me borrow it, and if I remember right, it didn't. The controllers felt really weird on it.
Okay. And had you seen the movie before you played the game?
I have seen the very first movie, and it was the most terrifying thing I ever saw when I was younger. And now I watch it, I'm like, whatever.
Did you have to like sneak into it, or was it something your parents were like, oh yeah? Like,
no, I actually watched it when it was on TV. Back in the day, it came on. It was edited, so,
right? Yeah.
But still, watching, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this."
Was it the? Sorry, I feel like I'm asking you a million questions here, but was it on the hosted by Billy Bob on TBS? Was it kind of like that time, or was it before that?
The guy that did it was Captain somebody. He was on USA Network.
Oh, okay.
I had it, but I can't remember his name. And if I could go back through and look, I could find it. But he used to host all these really bad horror movies and stuff.
Okay.
It was like Captain Someone, but he would show like some different ones. And it was the very first Friday the 13th was what he showed on there.
Okay.
And I remember watching it, and my aunt let me watch it.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So
it
was edited.
Your aunt was cool.
Yeah, she said there, I can't believe I let you watch that. I'm like, terrified of this lady killing everybody, because the very first Friday the 13th, it wasn't based on Jason, it was the mom.
Yeah.
But they ended up taking the game and released. I think it's based off of number 2, actually.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah,
but I think it sustained. Like Friday the 13th had made so many movies that Nintendo was like, we'll just push this out there,
Which is weird because I feel like, I mean, even still today, Nintendo's what they allow for adult content,
they were pretty. They would hold up to that. It was wholesome family fun is what they considered it. So off topic here for a minute, for censoring.
Yeah.
Like the very first Final Fight game that came out for Super Nintendo, the female bad guys in the game were all censored. They were like these punk people with the green hair and purple pants.
Okay.
And in the game, they wore like Daisy Dukes and a tank top.
Oh,
they censored that for the home release. So if you didn't play the arcade, if you played arcade and you're like, oh, you got the home version, you're like, well, there's something missing here. That's because they censored it. So
interesting. Okay, that makes sense.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was the Friday 13th game was not gory or anything like that. It was kind of cut dry. So.
Yeah.
So
So that makes more sense, and that, and I just to stay on that train. I think the first like movie licensed video game that I played was, ironically enough, the Mortal Kombat that came out. That was Mortal Kombat the game, or the movie The Game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Or it was like, maybe it wasn't Mortal Kombat, but it was like, it was
There
one
was
of the
there was a Jean-Claude
Street
Van Damme
fighting-
Street Fighter that came with a Street Fighter. It was like it was a clone of Mortal Kombat. It digitized the characters. You actually played Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Of course you did. I
So
mean, who
it
else
was
would?
so it
who
was a
else
Street
would you
Fighter
play?
game that was going into the realm of like what Mortal Kombat was, and it was a very big bomb.
Oh yeah.
The game was just horrible. There was a home version for it. I think there was 2 home versions. There was one for PlayStation 1 and there was one for Saturn. And the home versions were totally different from what the arcade was.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
it had the characters from the movie that posed in the game, and they used them in the game except for Bison at the time. So
Okay. Were you big into like the Street Fighter?
I
Mortal
was.
Kombat,
I was. Street Fighter was one of my go-to arcade games because Street Fighter 2 was so huge when it came out. I loved fighting games. When I first played it, I was hooked. I was like, I want to get good at this.
Yeah.
You know, and it was the first game I ever played that had 6 buttons
Yes.
that you could
yeah.
use for fighting. You know, like there's 6 buttons. Like, what are these all buttons these do? You know.
Do you think, like, if you can remember, did you know how to, like, did you realize as you were playing, like, oh, there's special moves, or was it somebody else told you, like, oh, you can do this special move, or you saw it somewhere? Because I always wonder how people figure that out.
I don't remember the names. I saw like Ryu, and I didn't know his name was Ryu at the time. It's Karate Guy. I'm gonna pick the Karate Guy.
yeah.
He's got the gi on. I'm gonna be the Karate Guy.
Right.
You know, and I would just do kicks and stuff, and I didn't know at the time when there was like special moves. And then later on, a guy I was playing with, he was an older than me. He was doing these special moves. He was throwing fireballs across. And I was like, how are you doing this?
Right.
You know, like, how do you do it? And he was telling me, oh, this is what you do. And he was like, tell me. So then I started like learning how to throw fireballs, and I'm like, this is cool. This gives me a one-upper.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
I'm like fighting kids that are like grabbing, like they don't know anything, but I'm hitting them with fireballs, you know, or spin kicks, you know.
And it puts some more life into the game too. You're like,
It
oh
does.
my gosh, there's something.
Like,
yeah.
oh, well, then I didn't even know you can even combo these, and we're like a combination attack where you hit a certain pattern, like a jumping fierce to a medium, and then throw your fireball. You could buffer your move to where it would come out after the punch, to where you would hit 3 times and it would just dizzy them. And then you're like, oh, I'm gonna walk up to him and just stumble in the corner, you know,
Right, yeah.
like chuck them in like a bag of laundry, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, it was just it was a different time when fighting games came out. At that time, it was something new, and it sparked a tremendous amount of market. You know, Street Fighter 2 was being played all around the world.
Right.
You know, tournaments, they were holding tournaments. California had huge tournaments with it. And then you were talking about Mortal Kombat, and when Mortal Kombat came out on the scene, it kind of stole Street Fighter's thunder, which was really cool because.
So okay, for some reason I thought Mortal Kombat came out first, but Street Fighter came out first.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, like when you were talking about Mortal Kombat, so the very first Mortal Kombat game I saw I was like, this looks like Pit Fighter, because you remember Pit Fighter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The original arcade Pit Fighter was a horrible digitized pit fighting game, but it were like the guys you could see them doing moves and stuff. They kind of refined that into like a fighting game. And the guy that they all kind of coded the Mortal Kombat game, they all kind of they produced it, but they also acted in the game. A lot of them were martial arts and stuff like that, so they kind of posed in the game. So, you know, going to the arcade and finding this guy that can throw ice and freeze your guy, I'm like, that was really cool. And,
Right, yeah.
And then the amount of like violence in that game are like, oh wow, this guy's can like uppercut this dude's head off. I'm like, what?
Right.
Or
right.
like pull his spine out, or I'm like, I've never seen that before. Like the amount of violence in that game, it was like watching a bad kung fu movie. You know, like some of the old kung fu theater movies with like
Right.
they're taking their hats and slicing people.
Yeah, like a James Bond film.
Yeah,
kind of, yeah.
And then, you know, and it got so popular that 1995, I remember watching the first trailer for Mortal Kombat in the movie.
Yes.
And them playing that theme song, you know,
Yeah.
it's so relevant.
Yeah.
And it was so popular at the time, you know, it's just like, wow, you know, I get to watch my characters on the big screen. It's just like.
Did you? And was that another one that you just like got to
Yeah,
go see?
I went to go. Actually, I didn't go to the theater to watch it on the first one. My mom went to Blockbuster and bought it and got it on VHS tape at the time,
Right.
and brought it home, and I watched it, and I must have watched it at least 4 or 5 times during that 3-day rental. My mom was just tired of hearing the music play,
Right. Yeah.
But it was cool. I got to see all my characters, and it was tame compared to what some stuff is on TV now. Even that movie, they tamed it to where it was a PG-13 rating. There was still some violence, but wasn't like the gore factor in it or anything like that. But it was cool seeing the special effects and the characters and stuff. And I think the movie, that 95 movie, was actually pretty decent. It did really well, I think.
I think so too. Did you see the kind of recent Mortal Kombat?
I have watched the recent one now. I liked it up to the point where I felt like they kind of deviated a little bit from the story.
Yeah.
I liked Scorpion being the main character, kind of like they did the story because of him coming back and fighting Sub-Zero.
Yes.
But introducing a new character that was not in the original games, it kind of like, I don't know, it kind of took away from the original story.
Yeah.
And then the same thing for the Resident Evil movies, the one with the Alice. I didn't.
Oh my gosh, the Resident Evil movies.
Those
I
didn't care for those. They had an awesome wow factor to them, but like for relevant for the game and story, they deviated from the story so much.
Yeah, and the Resident Evil movie that recently came out on Netflix, I have no idea what they were thinking. It was either a movie or a show, but I saw highlights from it, and the highlights that I saw were just unwatchable. I mean, it was like the films that they put in Mortal Kombat games and stuff, like on the PlayStation. Or I guess it was PlayStation was like the first time they had like movies.
Like the Sub-Zero mythologies had little cutscenes, and the Mortal Kombat 4 had cutscenes.
Yeah. And so, which actually interesting fact on the N64, Sub-Zero mythology. Had to just use still pictures because they couldn't have motion video.
Yep.
But just a random thing that I knew about. But it was the newer thing that they put out for Resident Evil was I was just like, man, I think that just finally put the final nail in the coffin for me. Of like, and I just don't understand how you can mess it up. I'm like, it's like an outbreak movie, like horror / action film. Like, how could it be bad? But they found a way.
They found a way to do it.
They found a way.
Because I think the first director that did the Resident Evil movies with the other ones with Alice, Paul Anderson, he's the one that worked. He's the one that actually did produced with the Mortal Kombat movie. The 95 one.
Oh, okay.
And then I think he picked up and started doing the Resident Evil one, and I think he just kind of deviated from the story. I mean, it was cool for what it was. Like I said, I'm not going to shoot it down. There's people out there that like those movies, but from my game playing standpoint, I just thought that, to me, this could have been a side story for Resident Evil, or because there was no Alice in the original games at all.
Right. Just speaking of side story for games, I remember my neighbor growing up. He was like my brother's age, just a few years older than me. But I don't know how. I think he had a brother that lived overseas for a while, and just shipped him all sorts of media and games and things like that you couldn't find here in the States, or you at least couldn't find easily.
Right.
And I remember he had a movie, like an animated movie, that was based off of the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
That was made in Japan only, but it had it was dubbed in Japanese. Or I mean it was subtitled in Japanese, but it was English actors.
Really?
But it never came over to the US or something weird like that. So I remember we were watching it, and at that point I had only known Final Fantasy from like Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't really understand what's happening, but it blew my mind that there was like a full motion kind of video game looking film that I was watching. I'd never seen something like that before. But
it's strange that you brought that up, because there was a Final Fantasy movie called Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, and it was done computered. It was a computer, but it was nothing based off anything that it was Final Fantasy, but had nothing to do with what the games were. It was a total different story.
Interesting. Okay.
And I watched it and I was just like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's cool, you know. It's done computerized. The characters look pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most successful animated films that verified for the Final Fantasy was the Advent Children, which came out, Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
Advent Children, which was a post movie about all the what happened in Final Fantasy VII if you played the game after you beat it and everything. Like, this was like after all that and stuff, and you know, it brought back characters that you love when you played the game. You know, Cloud Strife being the main antagonist, and then you got, you know, Sephiroth, which is the, you know, the bad guy from the game, which was just so well done. And
right.
You know, that's one of the games that just, like, I think, to me, revolutionized RPGs when it came out on PlayStation. Yeah,
right.
7.
I have to be honest. I actually never played 7.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it played through, right? But like I never experienced it myself, and I think it's because the very first Final Fantasy game that I actually like played that wasn't like I'm just turning this on for like 20 minutes was Final Fantasy X, and that game was a lot, and it took up so much of my time. And I remember thinking I was so close to the end and being like, I'm not even anywhere near the end. Like, I kept thinking, I was like, oh, this has to be the final boss. And I'm like, there's more. And it was a good game. The storyline was bogus. I felt like awkward the whole time I watched it. But the gameplay was fantastic.
Right.
And so it's kind of one of those things where I always hope that my buddies weren't watching, because I was like, God, this is so cringy. Like, I don't really want to be like known as the guy that like watched, you know, Final Fantasy game or whatever. Just because I was at that point of time in my life. Now, whatever. It doesn't matter. But so when somebody was telling me about 7, I was like, okay, I'll play 7. And I remember I booted it up, and then I was like, I don't know if I can commit. Because I was thinking 7 was more like the older games where they were in depth, but like I could get less invested in the story, I guess, and just kind of more into the game.
Yeah, 7 had a way of grabbing you. If once you start getting past that first point. Like, I fell in love with the game and the characters. The development of characters in that movie, the game, was just so well done that, when they did the remake, because they did do a Final Fantasy VII remake that they've actually...
Did they only do one?
They did part 1.
Okay, well, because I thought I'd seen, like, a couple different remakes out there, but...
Yeah, they did part 1 of the game. They changed the way the game was. They actually added a bunch of stuff in that was not in the original game.
Okay.
I think the next one is posted. I think it's coming out in 2024.
Okay.
First part of 2024. Now they did do a add-on to where you can play like one of the characters you get later in the original game. That kind of corresponds with that. But like the Advent Children, like if you didn't play Final Fantasy VII and you watched the Advent Children, you'd be kind of lost.
Right.
They kind of built off of that game. Actually, the story kind of like it built from that, from that ending. So kudos to them for developing that, because it was really cool the way they did it. So
right. Yeah. I watched through like all the like movie scenes, and then I watched somebody actually like play the game. Well, actually, one of my friends loves that game, so he played through it, and I just kind of like, ate snacks and hung out and watched. But I think for me, I was just like, I don't know if I can get invested in another Final Fantasy if it's going to be as long as 10 was.
Yeah.
and which is a shame, because I shouldn't say that, because there are so many games that I have 1,000 hours in that have no story whatsoever. And it's like, maybe I should have been playing into, a story-based game, so I actually kind of got something out of it. But like Stardew Valley does have a story. You could make it either way. You could either have a story or you don't have a story.
Right.
But that's one that I probably have 1,000 hours in or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I shouldn't complain that there's like so much good gameplay and footage and video and everything like that. But something about the Final Fantasy series that I was like, man, do I really want to get sucked in?
So is it like the tedious of like leveling up? And
I think so. It was like I really enjoyed it to a point, and then when it got to grinding, I was like, I don't want to do this.
Gotcha.
And then I never knew what I mean. For 10, I couldn't take 10 steps without looking at a guide. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I was either constantly missing out on something that was super important, or like a weapon that I needed for a game. Also, the first time I played Final Fantasy X, which is embarrassing because I was not that young at that point, and I had played plenty of video games beforehand. I didn't realize that there was like elemental damage. So I'd be attacking water monsters with water weapons and be like, man, they just like, their defense is so high. And because I liked that sword, I was like, that sword is like, looks cool. So I want to play with that one. And then I'd get one that had like lightning ability. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can attack with different elements. And it, I mean, when I figured that out, it was a game changer.
Because most of those RPGs, they throw that rock, paper, scissors aspect in there.
Yeah.
It's like, like, oh, what hurts ice? Well, fire,
Right, yeah.
Or, what hurts fire? Ice, what hurts water? Lightning,
Yeah.
And then the same thing, Final Fantasy VII, you'd have different enemies, and some were mechanical. If you fought mechanical enemies, you knew exactly lightning was going to be the most effective thing against them. So your summon would be lightning, your cast would be like your lightning spells, and then if you had like added materia to your weapon, lightning attack, you do more damage.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like it throws that rock, paper, scissors thing. It's like, oh, let me think about this for a minute,
right. I will say though that in 10, I remember the wedding scenario where you're like working your way up the stairs to, I don't remember the guy's name. I think it starts with an S, but
Seymour.
Seymour and the gal. It was like their wedding scene. You're fighting your way up there. If you use lightning on the robots, they gain health, which I was like, dude, come on. Like super cool mechanic. And I appreciate it as a gamer because you don't see that like attention to detail a lot.
Right.
But I was like, you know how long it took me to figure that out? And so I'm like using Phoenix Downs and I'm like, dude, my dudes keep dying. I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, what's weak against a robot? Obviously, it's got to be electricity. And just, like, oh, okay. I get it.
Okay. Like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wasted all my time, wasted my items. What's going on
Yeah,
with this,
exactly. And I'm like, then I got to start over. But it was a wild ride. And I did pick up the remaster of Final Fantasy X, and I enjoyed it. I didn't really like 10-2.
Yeah.
But which as a teenage boy, I don't know why I didn't like 10-2. I probably should have liked 10-2 a lot. But not gonna get into detail on that. But if you know the game, you know what I'm talking about. But I didn't enjoy that much. And then I can't say that I've played a Final Fantasy game since then. So I don't know. I know that 14 I think was online.
Right.
And then, but I don't know like. Did they come out with like 11, 12, 13? Or was it like... Because I know they kind of skip around.
12 got remade for the Switch and new system.
Oh.
It's actually the Zodiac version, which has the Zodiac job wheel that it was not even in the original USA release on PS2.
Oh.
So when they re-released that, you can actually play that. It actually made the game a little bit more robust, I guess.
Okay.
Because they used the fighting system, it was like a gambit system. Basically, your support characters would act on their own depending on what you set them to do. Like some could be support, some could be attack and then heal, or heal, support, and then attack. And they would just you can change those gambits around to kind of whatever the fight is. Really well done system. It was actually, I think it was the only one that was ever used with that gambit system.
Okay.
And then after that one came out, let's see, the 13 came out, and it used this, I didn't like it. It's called a stagger system. Basically, you would beat this enemy until their stagger bar would go completely up, and then once it would pop, it would just, they would just kind of dizzied out, and you would do your, regular damage, but I didn't care for it. It was, 13 to me was real linear. It wasn't like the other ones, so it didn't hold my attention very well. So.
Okay. Have you played through every one of them?
Not all of them. I haven't.
Okay.
13 had a couple parts, and I played halfway through 13. I got bored.
Yeah.
So I haven't played that one. I did play through 15. I did love 15.
Yeah, 15. I remember I was like, man, they're all riding in a car together.
Yeah.
I was like, what's happening? I mean, I guess because I always just imagine Final Fantasy as a steampunky kind of, but old timey game where in 10, for instance, there's people still living in huts.
Yeah.
But then 15 came out and they're driving in a car, listening to modern music and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I was like, okay. So I was like, and I guess too, does each game have a completely different storyline?
Almost, yeah. There's not one that ever continues off except for the 10-2, which kind of
Right.
continues from that.
Is it supposed to be like they're all in the same universe, or is it like
I
do you
think
ever have characters
I think it's a separate
I
stories.
gotcha.
So
Because I didn't know if there were characters that like from older games that you met in newer games.
no,
Or...
so like Final Fantasy VII, you're not going to find another Cloud or anything from another game
I
down
gotcha.
the road.
And
You know?
I only asked that because in 10, I remember when you first meet Orin, you know, which most badass character in the game.
Yeah,
I feel like,
I agree with
one of
you on
my
that one.
favorites. But when you first meet him, I felt like I was supposed to know him from somewhere. Because he's like, Orin! And then he's like, oh, you know, and it's like very little dialogue. And you're just kind of like, oh, there must be the game before this he must have been in or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, I guess I just didn't realize.
Now they have reused reuse some of the old names, like
Okay.
so one of the running jokes for Final Fantasy VII, there's always someone in a game called Wade or Biggs from Star Wars.
Oh.
There's always someone in the group that's Wade or Biggs. You're always going to find them Wade or Biggs. You know, it was kind of, and then someone named Sid. There's always going to be someone named Sid. through the
Okay.
game. But that was kind of like their running thing. It was kind of funny to find another character. Oh, Wade, where's Wade and Biggs at? You know, you're
Right,
gonna find
yeah.
them. Final Fantasy VIII had them. They were enemies. You know, it's just like random enemies. Oh, Wade and Biggs.
That's
But,
hilarious.
But yeah, the Advent Children was a really good film. I think it capitalized on the Final Fantasy VII population, and with that one being the most well known title for Final Fantasy VII.
Would you say that Final Fantasy is like one of your favorite series?
I would have to say yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. I enjoyed
Yeah.
the games, you know, for what they were. You know, there's a couple of them that I was like, but it's Final Fantasy. You know, it's Square has always pushed their innovations with their Final Fantasy series with different
Right.
combat and the way things are done with RPGs now. You know, it's more action based anymore. I think a lot of the turn based games have this kind of fallen off the. You know,
Right.
You know, I don't think we'll ever see another Final Fantasy turn based game if they do. But
and it's like a torn because I really enjoyed turn-based Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
and then when I saw games that weren't turn-based, I was like, I'm not gonna give it a chance. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but it was like that mechanic I really enjoyed. I
Yeah.
think too because it's kind of like they did that with some of the Paper Mario later Paper Mario games where they got rid of the turn-based treatment
yeah.
to keep the flow of the game going, which I understood, but it was
it's like to me. It takes away its relaxation point because there's times where you want to just come in and just kind of chill on the couch and not have to really put a whole lot of energy into your game. You know, a couple commands just hitting a button here and there, and you're like, oh, this is fun. You know, relaxation.
Right, and one of my favorite things to do when I game, even when I stream on Better With Sound on Twitch, is I love to like watch things in the background.
Yeah.
So I'll have just like videos on, or
Yeah.
like movies or something that I've seen a lot of
Right.
that I know what's happening. And so with turn-based games, it's great because I can just kind of like look over, pay attention, but also keep doing my thing. But I feel like in Paper Mario 1, it was clunky. You know, it's kind of clunky, and they perfected it in Thousand Year Door.
They did.
And then they had the Wii version. I can't even remember what it's called, or not Origami King, but anyway, it might have been Origami.
The Origami King was the one that came out for Switch not too long ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I got that one. I played the 64. I still have it, and I still have my 1,000-Year-Old Door. That 64 one was cool, and it brought it on a lot because of the Super Mario RPG that came out for Super Nintendo.
Yes.
This was kind of like they capitalized off of that. You know, I think that was a really good idea for.
And like what a clever like thing. I haven't played any of the later Paper Mario games, which I probably will, because I have a Steam Deck now, so I can just play pretty much anything. But it's like I think I hold on to the nostalgia of Thousand Year Door, but it is definitely one of those games where I can pick up and play. I think at any point.
Yeah.
Like the games that I can do that for, like Mega Man, Zelda, which lately I've been doing a lot of like Zelda randomizers, but any Zelda game I feel like I can just pick up and start playing and like be fulfilled.
Exactly.
And then Paper Mario for GameCube was like one of those as well that I can just like play and like just play the first couple hours of it and be satisfied.
You know, Mario has been around for so long, and it was kind of like the 1980s and stuff when they introduced that movie back in the 90s with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. They were Mario and Luigi.
Yeah.
You know, when I first watched, I was so excited because I rented that movie from Blockbuster expecting it to be Mario. You know, Mario was going to go save Princess Toadstool, you know, whatever. At the time, that was her name. You know, they tried to change it up to Peach, Princess Peach. But it was like a steampunk version of like...
Yeah, it was...
I don't know, the art... And even the cast even said that they said this didn't feel like Mario Brothers.
It really didn't. And I think, you know, I know people tell me all the time, like, well, when I was a kid, it was Mario Brothers and I loved it. But I remember being a kid and thinking, this is not, like, this is just some movie.
It's
like,
it's like, why are they calling this Mario Brothers?
I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I mean, yeah. And honestly, I remember, too, that the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, I didn't know that existed until I was in, like, I remember in 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
Like, in 6th grade, we had, like, somebody donated a bunch of books to the classroom, and you got to go up and, like, pick a book that you wanted to take home or whatever, and everybody could grab, like, one or two or something like that. And I remember looking under a stack, and there were 2 books called the Super Mario Brothers Super Show Super Book. And so there were 2 book versions of 2 episodes from the show.
Huh.
And I was like, oh, I love Mario. Like, I'm going to take these 2. And then I had them on the shelf for years and then saw eventually, I was like, wait, what is the Super Show? And so then finally I remember somebody telling me about it, and I actually own like a bunch of them over there. And I was like, this was way better than the movie. Like,
it was cool.
It was so good. Wassah Dudes, thanks for listening to our Retrolection podcast. I just wanted to hop in here for a quick second to talk about different ways that you can reach out to us. We have our podcast email, which is retrolectionpod@gmail.com. That's retrolectionpod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Discord and Facebook under Our Retrolection. Just want to give a shout out to my good buddy Colin that made all the music for this podcast. Thanks again, Colin. Last, I'd just like to plug my wife's new podcast, which is called On Wednesdays We Read Smut. This is the normalization of a very popular but not well talked about genre of books, also known as spicy books. It's like a virtual book club that meets every other week to talk about a new book in a series. She has her first episode out now, and you can find it on all major streaming services. Now let's get back to the show, shall we? So you were saying about the show.
So the show, so they bought Captain Lou Albano, which was from the WWF at the time.
Right.
He's played Mario, and then I forgot the actor that played Luigi, but it was a perfect pairing, and their voices were even used in the cartoon part of the show. So they would do the live show, and then they would do a little small cartoon, and then they would have something going on with their plumbing or something. They would have special guests that would pop up on the show. And then on Fridays when they had a show, they would do an episode of Zelda.
Yes.
The cartoon Zelda.
Yes, which you can find every episode except for I think the second episode on YouTube for free. They're all uploaded on there. I watched them. I thought they were good.
Yeah.
I mean, it was corny, but like also I was like, I'm into this. Like, I kind of like this. I'm surprised I got canceled.
You know, Nintendo backed a lot of things, and even Nintendo backed that Captain N, the Game Master. That used to come out. It was a Saturday morning cartoon. It was a kid named Kevin, and his little dog got sucked into this world of Nintendo.
Yes.
And they would always have to thwart Mother Brain and her little lackeys.
I forgot
it was
about that.
Eggplant Wizard and King Hippo from Punch Out.
Oh my gosh, dude. That is so crazy.
And they would have.
I remember that.
Later on, they were using it as a marketing tool. They put out Game Boy, so Game Boy was on there as well. The original Game Boy.
Dang, that is so crazy because I remember that so vividly now, but I don't think I would have ever thought of that if you didn't say that.
But it was something I enjoyed watching growing up because I was like, oh, cool, you know, Nintendo, and even had Nintendo cereal. They had it was Mario and Zelda. It actually was in a dual box, and it tastes like Captain Crunch is what it tastes like.
Right? Yeah.
So,
but I wonder if anybody still has that. If anybody has that, take a picture, put it on our Discord.
Yeah.
And,
we'd more than happy if you have any of those cereal boxes. I have not seen those in forever.
Yeah.
But the cartoon was awesome. The show was awesome. It ran for a few seasons, and then it just kind of dropped off, you know.
Right.
So.
And I know, like, you know, in today's world, obviously, there were a couple things about the Zelda series that were not good about, you know, like kind of like forcefully kissing and things like that between Link and Zelda or whatever.
Yeah.
But other than those parts, I thought it was well written. I thought it was
Yeah.
kind of quirky and just kind of like nobody really knew what the characters were supposed to look like or act like or sound like, and I kind of wish that Link was a little bit more of a hero and not so much of a dope.
Yeah.
But honestly, you know, I'm always down
They did
for
the
like
same
a
thing with
quirky
Simon
character.
Belmont from the Captain. It made him like some narcissistic guy that was just really wimpy.
Did they have a Castlevania?
They had no. They actually, when Captain N came out, they had some good guys. Well, one of them was Mega Man. That one was Kid Icarus, and then the other one was Simon Belmont.
Okay.
And Simon Belmont was like this narcissistic, wimpy guy that would just bug out. Like he would act like he was brave, but not really a whole lot. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, why would he do that to Simon? Because like Vampire Hunter, he's not supposed to be scared of anything. He's just a big wimp on here.
Right. Did you? I think one of my favorite video game to film, or not film, but show adaptations was the Castlevania series on Netflix.
I thought that was really well done.
I haven't seen the last season of it, mostly because when it comes to like shows I really enjoy, like series, when I know that it's ending, I'll hold off and I won't watch the end. A big thing like that is like I'll rewatch Trigun.
Oh yes,
which
yes.
I think they're coming out.
Yeah, they're
finally
actually
with like
I think so.
with some movie or show or something. To
Yeah,
kind of like,
and they're actually bringing Johnny Young Bosch, that used to be a Power Ranger, that voice Vance the Stampede. He's actually going to be playing his live version self of that.
Oh,
So he will be playing Vash the Stampede.
Oh, and it's gonna be live.
It's going to be a live show from what I heard.
Oh, well, I hope.
I hope it's
not like Cowboy Bebop.
So I was getting ready to go into that topic. You brought up a good topic, Cowboy Bebop. So Cowboy Bebop is probably one of my favorite animes of all time.
Okay, yeah.
So when that show came out on TV and when I watched it on Toonami back in the day, I was like, this is the best anime I've ever watched. And then later on they said, oh, we're going to be making a PS2 game about it. And I'm like, there's a PS2 game coming out for Cowboy Bebop?
Oh.
So I waited, and they had announced for USA release, and it ended up getting canceled.
No.
Because they released it in Japan, and the game was such a big flop, they didn't even bother bringing it over here.
Dang.
I was so disappointed.
Yeah, especially because you don't know how it's going to do in the West, you know? Like, it could blow up. But...
And I actually ended up getting a copy of the import and playing it on, and I was just like, I can see why this didn't make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
But I was like, man, they could have done this game right with the adaptation from the cartoon.
Did you enjoy the live action? Did you watch the live action?
I watched the live action. I just laughed at the first episode, and I turned it off.
Yeah.
I was just like, why did they...
I tried.
I tried so hard.
Yeah.
Like, I think they could have had an idea, but they deviated from the story and the character creation, or the characters in the movie and in the show so much that I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Right. And so, like, with Trigun, I'll watch, like, the first, I don't know, half of the season or 75% of the season, and then I'll start it over because I'm like, I just don't want to see the ending again yet. Like, I kind of want to just let it settle.
That was another one that was well done. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed that one, and there was another one that I thoroughly enjoyed that they didn't do anything else with was Outlaw Star, which
what
was
is it?
It was kind of like an animation at the time was kind of close to Cowboy Bebop a little bit, but it was like this guy named Gene Starwin. His dad died, and him and his dad were in a ship, and his dad died, and he was kind of like learning how to. He wanted to be a space pirate, basically.
Okay.
And he gets his own ship, and this ship is like controlled by a human AI that they made specially for the ship. And it was supposed to take him to this place called a ley line. It's supposedly where the ultimate treasure is supposed to be. And there were so many people out to get the ship because it was the only one that could get to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And he meets along these different people. He's got his friend James, which is a little kid that follows him around, and he ends up meeting like Aisha Clan, which is this cat lady that's really strong and brutish, and then this samurai lady that's like she's a trained assassin, ends up following him around, and then of course the Melfina, which is the girl, which is the AI that controlled the ship and everything. It kind of builds a relationship with all of them. It was just so well done. The voice acting was well done in that one too. I actually on Blu-ray. They re-released it on Blu-ray, and I was like,
"What's it called?" It's called
Outlaw Star.
Aloe Star?
Outlaw.
Outlaw Star. Okay.
Outlaw Star.
Huh. Was it and it was released in US as well, like with the English dub?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Huh.
It's made by the same people that made the Gundam Wing series. It's Sunrise.
Oh, yeah. I liked the Gundam Wing series. Too.
Gundam Wing series
Yeah.
is really good too.
I like the games too.
The games are really good. That's another one they kind of adapted well with games too. Some of the fighting
I mean,
games.
some games just make great like animes.
Yeah.
You know, as it should be. I feel like.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about we're talking about Cowboy Bebop and Trigun, and that reminded me of something that I watched recently. But anyway, it escapes me. It's fine. It's no big deal. But yeah, the Gundam Wing series. I remember Toonami. It being on Toonami for a little bit. Toonami was. If you don't know what Toonami is, look it up immediately and then just watch. It was a wild experience.
It was.
For new anime fans and for old anime fans.
It was. Sci-Fi Channel started when it was back in the day. Sci-Fi Channel was doing. They would show anime on there, but they would show it on Saturdays. They would do some of the movies on there. They would do Vampire Hunter D, and then Robot Carnival was another one they would do.
Okay, yeah.
There's one I really liked. I have a copy of it on Laserdisc called Lensman.
Okay.
Which is it was an older one, but it was really good. It was based off of a book series that was actually written a long time ago. Here, I can't remember the whole history on it, but it was really good. But after all that kind of sparked it to Cartoon Network was like, oh, we're gonna start broadcasting, anime. So Sailor Moon.
That's awesome.
Ronin Warrior.
Sailor Moon. Actually, my wife watched through Sailor Moon a little bit recently, and it's really good.
Yeah.
I was like, I'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
And it was good.
So I don't know if you remember Ronin Warriors.
Yep, I do.
They were basically called Samurai Troopers over in Japan. That
Okay.
was the one with the guys. They would do the samurai armor, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
And then Gundam Wing. They had
Gundam
a couple
Wing.
Gundam series.
I remember what I was gonna say now too, which I don't think ever was a video game. It might have been, but Yu Yu Hakusho.
I watched that one too.
I really liked that one.
Yep.
I remember seeing the first. I guess when I rewatched it as an adult, I was like, oh, I must have watched more episodes than I thought I did because I remember all of this. But I feel like I didn't talk about it ever or watch. I feel like I didn't watch much, but every episode that came on, I was like, I remember this. I remember this episode. I remember this happening.
Yep.
But I love that there were so many voice actors in there that I recognized, like Vegeta and Android 17 and
Frieza's voice was in there as well. Too.
Yes, yeah. The old lady.
Kurabasa. Remember he was Yusuke. He always called Yusuke.
Yes, yeah.
And he pulled his spirit sword.
Right. Yeah.
And
he was such a good, well-written character. Yeah, and it was like I loved. And then he was able to manifest his spirit himself without the help of the stick.
Yeah, I remember he learned how to do that with his blades and stuff. Yeah, it was a really good action series.
It was.
It started off like, oh, it's a dead kid trying to,
be a paranormal detective.
Yeah,
paranormal
detective. And it's like, oh, well, he's kind of gone on levels of kung fu and getting stronger and fighting all these demonic guys that are stronger than him. I'm like, I kind of like this. I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah. I loved the kind of towards the beginning of the series the tournament they had for whoever could train with
the dark tournament. Yeah.
To see who could train with the old lady at the end or whatever. That whole just section I think is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole anime, which is funny because it's early on into it, but I was like, man, this is just good. This is good storyline right here.
I even like the characters they inside with him, like Karamo, the one that could do that was the fox.
Yeah.
The one that had the rose whip.
Yeah, the rose.
I thought that guy was cool. He was real sly,
And then the Vegeta looking guy, the
guy with the three eyes,
the samurai sword. Yeah, I
might
might have to rewatch that. Maybe I'll just have to rewatch that tonight.
I haven't watched that in forever. That sounds like a good idea.
Did you bring a second thing to?
I did. Actually.
I'll let you start this time.
Okay. So, for those of people that don't know, I'm kind of a purist on my consoles, so I like to play on original hardware. I know a lot of people use Raspberry Pis and stuff that run emulation.
Right.
But there's a guy in Ukraine actually that makes these EverDrives, and they're called they're
Oh,
different ones for different game consoles. And I gotten a couple from 'em. So I got recently my purchase has been one for Sega Genesis. I got the Mega EverDrive Pro, which emulates Sega CD games. So you don't have to have the apparatus.
oh, that's so nice.
So you can run, if you have copies of your games, you can just put them as ISOs and it will read them and play on your 8-bit system or 16-bit system without any problem. It processes your audio and everything on there.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I have heard of EverDrive because I wanted to get one for the Game Boy or the Game Boy, I guess Game Boy Advance and N64. Mostly because I was really interested in at the time for the oh yeah, this is super cool.
I did bring the Game Boy one too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you were showing me this the other day, and this thing is so neat.
So
like
I got a 32 gig, micro SD card in there.
Right,
It
yeah.
runs.
And yeah.
Made by Chris.
Chris.
So yeah, if anybody's interested with Chris, check out his webpage. He's got a webpage. It's everdrive.me. You just go to his website and look, and you can look at his different cartridges. And I'd say that he makes really good stuff. Different ones. He's gotten, I think he has up to TurboGrafx 16. He actually has a one you can actually plug into a TurboGrafx 16 to emulate the Hue cards, whatever. That's in there, and yeah.
Then and you know what? What a good. I mean, I haven't bought one yet just because. I mean, I would say it's worth the money that it costs.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, oof. Like I'm a collector that doesn't normally buy things at its value. So when I got the Steam Deck, that was like a 6-month process. I want to get this. I'm gonna do all the pros and cons.
Well, when you told me about that, I was like, I want to help the guy out. So.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was it just melded so well together. But for when I do big purchases like that, I do my research. I research everything about it. I research if there's any problems, if it'll work with the things that I have. And so finally, I was like, there's more pros and cons, so I'm just gonna do it. But I'm all about that deal. I got to wheel and deal and get people down to the lowest number and everything like that. And but the thing that I brought was something that I got for, I believe it was $1. I went to an estate sale.
Yeah.
And I was hoping to find an old Atari system or just something kind of older.
Yeah.
And naturally, for an estate sale for an older couple, they didn't really have that sort of thing. But what they did have was this random camera that was a promotional piece for the N64.
Are you serious?
And so
that is neat.
It's like a random kind of...
That's
it takes film, and literally the only distinction that it's for the N64 is this tiny little logo on the right-hand side if you're looking at it. That's printed on it. Other than
that's neat.
Other than that, there's no Nintendo branding. There's no. So I did find that I guess it released with a few Pokemon Snap games. Now there is a rare version that has Pokemon on it, but this one released with a re-release, I think. So it's not really worth anything, but the story alone, just having it for the N64 collection is insane. Because I'm like, where, how would I ever find this? Just in a random estate sale, and it was in the bag, so I had to open it up from the bag.
That's pretty
and,
cool.
Look at it, and I remember just thinking when I saw it that day, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just find? Thinking I struck a gold mine. I found this $1,000 camera from the '90s.
Right.
It's never. And then it's worth $5, but I still had to pick it up. Yeah.
So you're talking about finding rare stuff. So in the last episode we had talked about the movie Wizard.
Yes.
The Wizard with Fred Savage, the kid. So when that movie came out, when you went to the theaters to watch it, they were handing out these miniature Nintendo Power magazine things that would come out that when you go see a movie, they would get it to you for free.
Oh.
So I didn't know anything about this. I didn't watch it until after it came out and I got it on VHS. So about 7 years ago, A guy on Craigslist was selling a bunch of his old Nintendo books and magazines and stuff, and he wanted like $40, and there were some ones in there called Game Atlas and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I sent a message. He says, "Yeah, you want these?" And I said, "I'll sell them to you for this." I said, "Yeah, I'll take them." I said, "What you got?" He goes, "I only got a little bit of everything. I'm just trying to get rid of this stuff. My wife doesn't want me to keep it in the house."
That's the best.
so I was like, "Yeah, I'll come meet you." So I gave him the cash money, and I took those books home. And I started going through the books, and there was a old Electronic Gaming Monthly with Final Fantasy 1 that came out for the Nintendo. And when I opened it up, halfway through it, there was the Wizard Nintendo Power Mini magazine in the middle of that
Oh my
thing.
gosh.
And it's in very good condition. I went online to look it up, and it sells decently priced. So I put it away, and it's still intact, and I just kept it.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe I found this.
Right.
I'm like, no one. This is like a very rare thing. So I'm like, I'll just keep a hold of it. So I got those books on my shelf, and I know that I got that still tucked in there in one of my magazines. So I know it's there.
That's great.
But
I like the magazines. Like I'll collect any Nintendo Power magazines or anything I see just for a steal, or guides. Like I'll do that. But I don't go out of my way to look for them. But sometimes it's so awesome when you get something, and that's happened to me a couple times where I'll open up a magazine and there'll be something in there that's not even really worth money, but it's like the history behind it.
Yeah.
And then you post it somewhere and you're like, "Could somebody tell me a little bit about this?" And then they're like, "I haven't seen one of these for 30 years or whatever." That's happened to me twice, where I've had something fall out, like a poster or something, fall out of a magazine that I got for like a couple cents.
Yeah.
And then post it online, and somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, like, I haven't seen one of these in 20 years or whatever it is." And the last one I had was like, ripped to shreds and all that. And I think for me, that's what is so great about collecting, is like finding that history in something. Because there are some people which, whatever type of collector you are is not wrong. But there are some people that collect and it's like, it is purely for like I want to display the value of what I purchased. Like I want to buy something super expensive and super flashy and like have it up on my wall, which I do that too.
Yeah.
But everything I own, I play. So like everything I own, I use, and if I don't use it, I reevaluate and then I sell it. So other than the N64 games that are garbage that I own, just because I'm trying to go for a full collection. But besides that, everything that I own, I play.
So like it's kind of funny that I know our age difference is a little different. So back in the day, there was this place called Children's Palace. It was close to what Toys R Us was. Same type of thing, but it's called Children's Palace. And they used to sell video games. So I used to have one there in South Carolina that I used to go to when I was younger before they closed down. And they got closed shortly after, I think after 90, they just kind of shut down. And Toys R Us was still big at the time. But it's funny, I bought a couple of Nintendo games off of a guy, and he had boxes with him, and he gave me the boxes, and then one of the ones I opened up actually had a receipt in there, and it said Children's Palace, and it had the actual date and how much that game was at the time was only $30.
Oh my god!
And I'm like, holy crap, like how long has this been in this box, or or where was this at? And I looked for the location and where it was located. I went up on Google and found it's gone. But still the fact that someone actually left the receipt that they bought this game from.
Especially receipts can be so tricky because they just disappear. Like even if you have the
or they
physical
fade
receipt,
out,
or
they fade out. Yeah.
So I always love, even when I see something that's from like 2013 or something like that. You know what I mean? I own a game. I think actually it's in the group of games that I'm giving. That you'll be buying from me. That has a receipt in it for a DLC.
Yep.
That had not been activated.
Yep.
So it's one of those interesting things where I'm like, does that still work? But like I don't own a whatever, I can't remember what console it's for, but like whatever it was for, it was one of the first like DLC-able type things. And I the code's in there, and I remember the buddy that gave it to me was like, oh, I never ended up using it. He's like, I don't even think I ever played the game. He's like, I opened it and I think I popped it in once and then we like never picked it up again.
Wow.
And so I'm like, man, does that still work? Like, does that still honored? Or sometimes I always want to be kind of cheeky and like send Nintendo some of the stubs from Nintendo Power for contests.
Yeah.
And be like, you know, like, hey, like I'd like to sign up for these.
Anymore.
Well, yeah, but like just to see if they would send a response.
It's funny you brought that up. It's kind of funny. So back when Ninja Turtles was huge, and it's still a huge thing
right?
today.
But you know,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, came out for Nintendo. When it was released, it came with the instruction booklet, and the very back of it had a $5. It was a free pan pizza from Pizza Hut with the little ticket in the
I've
back.
seen. Okay, yeah, I've seen
Someone
this before.
bought a copy of that with the booklet and actually took the coupon out of it and took it up there, and Pizza Hut actually accepted it and gave this guy.
Really?
He got a free pan pizza from this old Nintendo booklet.
Here's the thing. They honestly probably accepted it because they're like, this thing is worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
We will, I mean, and maybe not thousands, but I know because I had a copy that I was looking to sell to you, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, how can I tell? Because there was two, like I use price charting for a lot of things, which, you know,
that's what
some people are plus and minus on that, but that's what I use.
Yeah.
And but I remember seeing on there it was like, you know, TMNT 2 arcade for $30 or whatever it was, and then it was the arcade copy for the Pizza Hut variant or something, and it went for like, I don't know, like $400 or something. And so I was asking people online, I was like, how can I tell if this game is the Pizza Hut one or if it's the regular one? And they're like, oh, well, the Pizza Hut one comes with that coupon. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll never know. And they're like, yeah, there's no way to tell if it actually came with it or not.
If it comes with the coupon, you know.
Which is interesting because people still sold loose copies without the coupon as if it were the Pizza Hut one, but like I'm guessing to maybe people that didn't know and they just bought it. And,
but
which is unfortunate.
It's in the very back of the instruction booklet.
Okay, yeah. So
I actually cashed mine in when I bought mine. So
oh, really?
I did.
Yeah.
My dad
interesting.
My dad took me
Which,
up and got it.
again, like back in the day, I'll never know. When you were talking about the movie theater, you know, booklet thing, I think the first and only time that I got something from the movie theater was when the first Pokemon movie came out.
Oh, I didn't they have
they had like the Pokeballs.
Yeah, the Pokeballs
with the gold coin.
Yeah,
it
was something that was only handed out when you went to the movie to watch it.
Yeah, but they had like
that's amazing.
They had like 4 different ones, but you didn't know what you were gonna get. So like I think my brother and I went and we both got Pikachu, and then we were begging my parents to go back so we could collect the other 3.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, no, like you saw the movie once, you're seeing it once, that's it. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, bummer, dude. Like, no.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder now too, is that like there's some games that I know will hold their value, like, you know, Breath of the Wild or some Switch game, Mario, things like that. But like I feel like now, like 30 years from this point, will something that I own now that I was like, I'm going to keep the box or I'm going to hold on to this, will it be worth as much comparable as like a game from the 80s is now? And I actually don't know the answer to that, because I don't know if like, because the things from back then I know will only grow in value.
Yeah.
And maybe not a lot, but I mean they'll either stay consistent or they'll grow unless there's a huge crash.
Yeah.
But like I feel like I hold on to things now, like my Switch games and cases and you know, things like that. And I just don't know if down the line if people will still be interested to pay money for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Or with digital downloads and stuff, they'll be like, oh, I already own the game. Like I don't want.
Well, a lot of that stuff can too. People do a lot of dumpster diving, and I've seen YouTube videos of people dumpster diving in GameStop dumpsters to pull promotional stuff out of there, posters or standees or anything, and they actually sell them on eBay or someone wants to collect them. You know,
I actually used to do dumpster diving behind GameStop. I used to find a lot of good stuff back there.
Yeah, because you can find like maybe a burnt copy, maybe a copy of a game disc that needs to scratch it. Maybe you just like, oh, I can fix that, or or something like that. You know, but there's a guy on YouTube that does that, and he's always finding like posters and all kinds of stuff like that. But a lot of stuff is relevant for people that want to like decorate their man cave. I've seen guys with all sorts of stuff from like stores and stuff put in their room, and it looks cool. Right. You know, just to have that feeling like, oh, he's got a kiosk in his room. You know, a GameCube kiosk. You know how how rare is that? You know,
Right, yeah.
stuff like that.
That's something I would love to find an N64 kiosk. That I think that like once I collect all the systems and the games, that'll be like the final nail of like I don't need to go into like the Japanese market or the
you're
Euro market.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it'll be like I'll have that and then I'll feel complete. You know, and I think and I'm hoping that it's not like where I watch shows where I hope that I actually someday complete the loose collection. There are some games that I'm dreading because I know I will only be able to purchase them. You know what I mean? Like there's like the Super Bowling, which is like a $1,000 game or something.
Or the Sculptor's Cut of Clay
Sculptor's Cut, which I know it's like I'm never just gonna find that in a box. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the chances of that are so low.
You know, that one was a Blockbuster release only, and that was you can only get it from Blockbuster. So and it's hard to find the box, or even people sell that thing so high.
Right. So like that's why when I first started doing it, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for a loose collection because more space on the shelf and more money in my pocket.
Right, exactly.
I just can't go for like complete box sets anymore, I don't think.
Right.
Unless it's something like I can't pass up. Like I have the version 1 complete in box Ocarina of Time, which I think I got for like maybe $10 or something. Something was just like I just don't want it anymore.
Right.
And I was like, okay, like I'll get that, obviously, display it. But I'm not gonna go through and like find a box for everything.
So I'm not going for a total my game collecting has been like just random titles. I don't have a full collection of anything.
Right.
But like my Sega Genesis titles, I want the original box with the clamshell box with the booklet in it.
Right.
And I will find someone that sells. If I can't find, I'll find someone on eBay that's selling the box or whatever, and pay the money just so I can have it on my. To me that's I guess. Part of the collecting of that, having that art box with the clamshell, and you see the Sega symbol in there, that's just part of it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I looked down at the time. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
That's cool.
But I think that'll be a good spot to end it.
Yeah.
So that we have something else to talk about next time.
Yeah. So
because we could go on for hours. I feel like.
So I think the next episode I'm gonna bring in my Atari links. We're gonna just talk about some handhelds.
Nice.
And some just some of the memories of those and how well those ended up doing now with mods, because a lot of people can mod those now with different screens and stuff. So I thought that would be a kind of a cool
I love that.
thing.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I'll pull down a couple of my handhelds.
Okay,
too,
cool.
that I have. I don't have many, but I got a couple.
That sounds good.
But is there anything that you guys would like us to talk about? Does anything that we talked about today or last week or at any point like spark something in you that you're like, oh man, I forgot about that, but I remember that. I feel like we both have a pretty eclectic knowledge of gaming, collecting, anime, just memories in general of things. I know earlier you were talking about arcades, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to touch on that yet because I want to have like a whole thing about that. So is there anything that you guys want to hear? You can reach out to us on email at our retrolection, or actually, sorry, it's just retrolectionpod, POD, at gmail.com. You can reach out to us on our Discord, which is our retrolection. And then just hit us up on like any of the socials. So these will be on YouTube and things like that. You can hit us up in the comments or whatever.
Yeah. Feel free to give us some feedback on our conversation. If there's something that feel like we need to like maybe hit more on topic or whatever, just let us know. We'd be more than happy. We're just kind of just winging it now. This is sort of new for us, and we want to try to do the best we can, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the podcast.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Love it.
The gaming community is one of the best communities out there, I think.
Yeah.
I don't want to say more than like comic book fans, because I know how hardcore comic book fans. But if I had to guess, I would say that gaming, collecting and gaming is probably
come into a second spot on that one.
Yeah. It's different but really good. So, but I think that's it for us this week, and we will hit you guys up next week.
Yep.
So, all right,
later, y'all.
Later.